Hello and welcome to Date Wheel of Fortune. My name is Jody, I'm your host. Are you ready to play? Let's get on with it. 4 questions across 3 rounds, a maximum score of 40. Round 1. What type of watch do you think I'm going to be reviewing today? I'll give you a clue. It's not a big brand watch. Yes, you've guessed it, it's a micro brand watch. Round 2. Now there's 2 answers I'm looking for in round 2, so 20 points on the table. What style of watch do you think it's going to be, and what platform do you think they'll be using to launch it on? Use the buzzer if you know the answer. Yes, you're right again. It's a dive watch and they're launching on Kickstarter. Final round, last 10 points on offer. Can I get some dramatic music, please? Thank you. Okay. What movement do you think they'll be using to power this watch? Yes, you're right again, it's a Seiko NH35. What? What's wrong? What happened? Yeah, look, alright, enough of this nonsense. I get it. I don't think we're quite at market saturation point yet. I think this watch will sell well, and I think there'll be another 20 or 30 watches like it sell well next year, but we're certainly at a more saturated point in the market than we were a couple of years ago. I think 2 years ago I said yes more than I said no to this type of watch. Now I say no far more often than I say yes. I'm guessing the same applies to you as applies to me. If I'm going to say yes to a review, and if you're going to put your hands in your pocket and actually pay your hard-earned cash for something, it's got to be doing something different. It's not going to be run-of-the-mill. It's got to be doing something different from maybe the other 3 or 4 NH35 powered dive watches by micro brands that you've already bought over the last couple of years. Now, this video is sponsored by MMI. They sent me pictures of their new watch, the Turret, and I said yes. I actually said no to their last watch, the Dumbo. I'll leave it to your imagination to work out why I said no to that one. The reason I said yes to the Turret is because I think they are doing something different. They're doing a number of things different, specifically with the date complication, hence the whole date Wheel of Fortune nonsense that I put you through over the last 2 minutes. I've only ever seen this style of date complication used on one other watch, and that was a $3,000 Oris, so they're in pretty good company. Let's flip the camera and have a look at this one. Okay, so I will obviously leave a link to the MMI website and or the Kickstarter campaign in the description of the video. This one goes live on the 27th, so you've got a couple of days to have a look around, do some digging, do some research. I think there's a couple of other YouTube videos out there as well for you to reference. $279 on the early bird, nothing much beyond $300 even if you're a bit late to the party. I think that's still plenty of value for these. 4 different colorways. There's a vintage style DLC option, there's lume dials, and the one that I'm most interested in, that dial date complication. And I have got 1 lume dial and 1 dial date complication, the Date Wheel of Fortune, in this PU leatherette roll. Also comes with a Tropic strap for your $279. but only a 1-year warranty, which is always a cause for moans and niggles. So what is it? Well, we have a fairly stoutly made 300-meter dive watch that I think is going to wear well on a variety of different wrist sizes thanks to a relatively compact lug-to-lug and an inverted mid-link, and it has just about enough going for it to separate it from the crowd. Of course, I have a few gripes, don't I always, but overall I think it is a fairly strong offering. 40mm in diameter, 13.3mm thick, but only a 47mm lug to lug, so nice and compact. Interestingly, they have gone for a 22mm lug width. Inverted mid-link of the end link though, as mentioned. Not much taper here, down to 20, back up to 21.5 at the clasp. Sized up for me, 7-inch wrist. This one weighs in at 175 grams, so it is definitely chunky for a 40. And by the way, heaps of spare links, so big guys are not going to be disappointed with this one today. There's a distinct whiff of Zelos Swordfish and therefore Seiko Samurai with all of these angles on the K-shape here, but you'll notice coin-edge bezel recessed into the case. I think that's one of a number of features that just mark this one out as a little bit different from some of the other watches that I've reviewed as discussed. So we have a vertical brush on the mid case, we have got a high polished chamfered edge running the length of the mid case and also on the interior edge of the lugs there. It's an all brush bracelet, I'll show you that in just a second. Small crown guards, perhaps more decorative than functional, and a nice easy to grip crown with the MMI logo. Coin edge bezel with an ion plated stainless steel insert. Again, more scratch resistant than aluminium, but not as brittle as ceramic or sapphire. We have got a 3mm flat piece of sapphire crystal, talking of which, with blue anti-reflective undercoating. All of the specs that you would expect for a watch at this price. H-link bracelet is a nice point of difference though, you don't see too many of them. All brushed finish throughout, just push pins. There is a stretch goal to make those screw links if that is met. The clasp though is one of my favourites. You know I love this style of clasp, so we have a fold over with the company logo, double security pusher. It's a properly milled clasp. 5 micro adjust, chamfered edges, no diver's extension or any of that nonsense, because let's be honest, 99.999% of the people that pick up one of these will not be wearing this watch over a wetsuit at the weekends. That is definitely my preferred clasp. Screw down stainless steel case back is slightly unspectacular. 300 meters of water resistance in conjunction with the screw down crown, usual spec sheet around the edges, advertising the sapphire, the 301-6L stainless steel, and the Seiko NH35 that I'll talk about in a second. Number 1 out of 300, it looks like they're going to individually mark these units, which is always a nice touch, but doesn't really add much, to be honest. One definite value add is quick release spring bars on the bracelet. I'm beginning to see this filter into this price area of the market more and more often. That is a good thing, especially when this watch comes with an additional strap. It comes with a Tropic in with a package. It's going to be much easier to swap them back and forth without scratching the underside of the lugs, and let's be honest, we have all done that. Seiko NH35, if this is your first YouTube microbrand video, hello and welcome to the wonderful world of YouTube microbrand reviews. You'll find 95% of watches at this price using the Seiko NH35, a 24 jewel hacking and hand winding bi-directional auto from Seiko. They're pretty rugged, pretty robust, pretty reliable, and I've seen so many of them, I don't even care how accurate this one is. Most of them tend to run at about +5 to +10 seconds per day. A solid, if unremarkable, choice. But let's switch from the Lume dial version that they're calling the Polaris colorway and have a look at this really quite nice blue dial with that date complication that I have been gibbering on about since the beginning of the video. I've only ever seen this once before. That was on the Oris Aquis Great Barrier Reef 3, a watch that was gorgeous but $3,000. So again, it's nice to see companies like MMI bringing those little touches down towards the value-packed end of the market. You can also see that iron-plated stainless steel insert does look rather nice, kind of blue-black on this one as well. Now, one thing I will say, they're going to change that from red to orange. It's not the most obvious way of telling the date at the moment, but a nice point of difference for this watch nonetheless. So we have applied double batons at the 12 and the 6, single batons everywhere else, and a recessed minute track around the outer edge, so there is quite a bit of depth on this one. Again, that power on off MMI logo, just turret, the model name in orange, and 300 meters, 1,000 feet of water resistance advertised above the double batons at the 6 o'clock. The handset's alright, again something a little bit different from the norm, kind of hexagons with tiny little syringe tips in a brushed metallic finish with a paddle second hand, and there is a reasonable amount of lume. I'll do a lume comparison side by side of both of the watches. Initially, great glow from both. I do like the vintage style smaller Arabic numerals on the bezel insert on both of these watches. I think it gives the whole watch a slightly more classic look than contemporary. If I crank the speed up though, you can see that the lume is fading. I've been told by Victor, the owner of the company, that they will be adding about 30% more lume to both of these models, and they're going to change from spray print to silk print for the lume dial version, so it should be even brighter than it currently is. On wrist, I must say it wears rather nicely on my 7-inch wrist. You don't see 40-22 all that often. That can look slightly disproportionate. I think in this case it gets away with it, and it is quite well balanced in terms of that 175 grams between the bracelet and the head of the watch. I guess with the inverted mid-link of the end-link and the 40mm diameter, guys who have slightly smaller than average wrists but like a chunky watch will be well served with this one. 47 lug to lug as well helps with that. Sits nice and flat, and because of those angles it kind of tapers in well. I'll do the overhead shot with the lume dial version. Silver hands on a white dial, never the most legible of the colour options on this or anything else, but it doesn't do too badly for itself, and I guess this one comes into its own when you switch the lights off. Outside, no surprises, still retaining a fair degree of legibility thanks to the anti-reflective undercoating and a fair bit of depth on the dial thanks to the raised indices but the recessed minute track. On wrist, as I said, definitely a kind of swordfishy samurai vibe, but probably more wearable than either of those, which is a good thing. Moans and niggles, 1 year warranty, I have already mentioned that. I think they could easily have puffed this up to a 41 or a 42 and retained the overall proportions and wearability, but hey, I kind of get it if you want to do a 40 and appeal to a slightly bigger market than a slightly larger watch, whilst retaining a bit of chunk by having 22mm lugs and a decent amount of weight, then why not? Branding. MMI, modernization, modification and innovation? Ooh, not sure about that one. And the logo, it looks like an on-off switch as discussed. I can see one M and an I in there. I'm not quite sure where the other M is. And turret, there is some spurious link with a warship. I always reckon they make the watch and then decide on that afterwards, which is why I haven't even bothered mentioning it. And then there is the final question that you have to ask yourself. Do you really need another NH35 powered microbrand dive watch at around the $300 mark? If the answer is yes, I'd be going straight for the Lume Dial special date version, basically combining these two. I reckon that has got enough going for it with the recessed bezel, the H-link bracelet, the nice clasp, the Lume Dial, the special date, etc, etc, and that ion plated bezel. If you like the look of the watch, that's the model I'd be going for. That's where my interest lies, certainly with this one today. So there you have it, the MMI Turret, not your average run-of-the-mill $299 NH35 powered dive watch, or at least I don't think so anyway. H-link bracelet, when did you last see one of them knocking around at this price? I love the way that the bezel integrates in the case, kind of like a Seiko Samurai. Classic looks though, and the date complication. I genuinely don't know too many more watches that do it that way, and I don't know why they don't. I think it makes the dial look fantastic. If that's the USP though, they're gonna have to tweak it a little bit. I know they're talking about a color change. I reckon that aperture needs to be a little bit larger so you can actually read the date at a glance. At the moment, it's not that obvious. I reckon it'll do well though. I think it's got enough going for it to mark it out from the crowd. How well NH35 powered microbrand dive watches do next year and in 2022 and beyond, I guess that's up to the imaginations of the manufacturers, and that's up to you, the consumers. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in a future video.